So, I believe that there is a term used in literature, when you're writing a book, and it's called Chekhov's gun. Now, if I remember this correctly, which I may not be, so feel free to correct me, but isn't Chekhov's gun an idea or a way of writing in which if you mention like a gun on the fireplace mantle in the first chapter, then it has to go off by chapter 3, or else don't mention it. Something like that. Essentially, I think it has something to do with the idea that you mention or you foreshadow something, and then there should be like an expectation that eventually that foreshadowing will come to completion and something will happen, right? So I could be getting this wrong here, but isn't that what that means? I apologize for the noisy audio. Got some bumpy roads here and stuff. Not to mention my keys jingling or whatever. But with Chekhov's gun, the idea is that you mention something and then something eventually happens related to what you mentioned, right? Because if you just leave an open loop and you don't close it, that might be really annoying, or maybe it's even considered bad writing if you just do not bring something like that to a conclusion of some sort, regardless of what it is, maybe. So what does all this have to do with the current time that we're in, that America is in specifically? Full disclosure, I'm not American, but nonetheless I'll say some things that are on my mind or on my heart or whatever that I want to say. But on the topic of Epstein, which has been ongoing for probably, arguably at least several years. I mean, it depends on your level of knowledge, or, if you knew signs or clues beforehand or not. I won't speak for everybody here, but most people probably, learned about this more recently, in the sense that it was 2019 when he supposedly killed himself. There's somebody here too, man. Small town, all the good locations get taken up so easy. Hopefully they didn't hear me say that, because it'd be kind of awkward. But anyway, so I guess I'm driving around. I'll go to my other spot. I got another spot out here. Anyway, you just want to go to a nice scenic place and vlog, Anyway, back to being serious. So, I think they're leaving, so I probably could go back. But anyway, it's fine. I don't want to weird them out or anything. So, on the topic of Epstein, people, whenever you learned, or whatever the way to say that is, whenever you found out about this story or this situation with Epstein, whether you found out recently, whether you found out years ago, whether you found out or had an idea that something was maybe happening many years prior to when most people found out about it, regardless of when you found out about it, there's been lots of developments, that's fair to say. And all of this idea that there is going to be this kind of justice or release of the client list or something, like the idea that something would happen as opposed to the mostly nothing that has been happening. You could say mostly nothing within reason, because in the Biden administration, what happened or developed towards this? Probably not much, right? And so then, with Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Trump and everything, people are thinking hey, now is going to be the time, or something like that. Now is going to be the time when, when stuff gets done, justice hopefully happens. They're talking big talk, hopefully they walk big walk. And initially, even this is bumpy here. And 1 second. Okay. Let me park in a place with half decent lighting. That's blowing out the camera there. Is that better? Okay. Do that. Turn the car off. Anyway, okay, we're here. I need to like get this tripod situated. Okay. Alright. Is that good? My face is like blown out. 1 second. Okay, change the camera setting. Let me readjust the lighting here. Is that better? I feel like and now that's in my face. My goodness. Just pick something, man. That'll do. Anyway, so still don't know if this is good enough. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Okay, that's better. So anyway, so you know, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, all these people talking this big talk, right? About whatever it was that they said. Like, I'm not the reliable news guy right now, okay? I'm not the guy that's gonna say he said exactly this on this and such a day on that podcast or whatever, but it's like, if you've seen the clips, you already know what's up. You know what's happening, or you know what's been talked about. Like, whether it's Pam Bondi saying in interviews about how there's all this evidence of, you know, hours of Epstein doing bad things, or having, you know, media files of things relating to children. Like, I'm gonna just say it in those words, but if you know what's been going on, then you know what the details are enough to understand what's happened here. So bad stuff, crimes against children, probably you could say some of the worst things, some of the worst crimes, right? On the scale of crimes, right? Probably some of the worst stuff. Is that fair to say? Anyway, so you have Pam Bondi saying this, right? You know, and didn't she say she had, like, you know, a bunch of documents on her desk or something like that, or the FBI bringing over truckloads or whatever it was that she said? I might be misquoting it slightly, but you get the point. So you have Pam talking this stuff. You have Kash talking about whatever he said on podcasts before he was confirmed or whatever. Essentially, I'm going to summarize here. The idea is that they're talking like stuff's about to get done. You know, business is going to happen. Kash and Pam, they're going to get in there. They're going to release the evidence, even if people may have not thought that anybody was going to get arrested, even though that would be hard to believe if they actually released everything and it was undeniable. But anyway, I digress. If that's the proper word, digress is that the proper word to use. Anyway, so people probably thought that at the very least, even if nobody got arrested, that the truth would get out, the evidence would get out, and the definitive proof that is hopefully undeniable would be released, and you'd have some sort of like confirmation that like finally something has happened that is tangible, and like, see, this is the thing. Like, maybe people just want the thing to point to say, this is the undeniable proof right here, this is it, right? And so people probably thought, maybe people thought that, okay, with Kash and Pam in there, or Dan Bongino, all of them with Trump, whatever, that, you know, something was finally gonna happen, right? And then now, what seems to be happening at the time of recording this video, which is July 7th, I believe, like, it seems like if you're on Twitter right now, things are looking kind of bleak, right? So you got, what is the wording roughly for this? It's that, is it true? Now, I don't know if this is fake news or if this is actually legit reporting or not, but regardless, because I'm not completely expertly informed on this right now, but it's the idea that it's like, apparently they're saying, supposedly, if I'm understanding this correctly, that Epstein wasn't killed by somebody else, that he committed suicide, that there was no client list, and he wasn't running a blackmail operation or something like that, and that he wasn't, I don't know if somebody said that he wasn't a spy or something like that. Whatever it was, those collection of statements, whatever it was that was released recently, right? To hear that, and if that is indeed accurate reporting, not just some fake news thing, if that's actually legit reporting that the people in power, or the people that we're looking to try to release the evidence, if that's the thing that they're saying now, then where are we at, right? Like, people wanted the finally moment, and is it possible that right now it seems maybe bleaker than ever? Is that possible? Do you agree with that statement? And so it's kind of like, the way to bring back in Chekhov's gun into all this, if I'm quoting that correctly, if I'm not, then this is going to be kind of an awkward situation here because the analogy is supposed to make sense. But anyway, if I'm accurately summarizing or telling you what Chekhov's gun means, feel free to Google that because I might be getting it wrong. But anyway, I'm going to tell you what I think it means, or I already did. But anyway, if Chekhov's gun is supposed to go off in the 3rd chapter, or else don't bother mentioning it, then, like, what is going to happen? Like, let's say that the Chekhov's gun analogy in this scenario is, Epstein, some sort of tangible evidence, releasing the files or the client list or whatever, because, like, just some sort of, like, appropriately released tangible evidence, right? Because you shouldn't put out stuff that is like illegal content, in the sense of, like, you shouldn't put out abuse material for the public to just see completely, like whatever you want to say, uncensored, or whatever word is proper for describing that. If you are to show people what happened and talk about it, you should do it in a way where you're not just exposing the bitter cruelty done to these innocent children. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to show evidence of what Epstein did, you probably have to be very careful in how you actually show the actual evidence. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're not just going to show child abuse material in some press release or something like that. You're going to probably have to do some sort of method of showing it where you're not showing, like, grotesque evil, on daytime television or whatever on YouTube. So it's like, do it properly, release something that is evidence of what happened, that is undeniable, but do it properly, do it, like, ethically, do it responsibly, right? Whatever the proper word is for doing it the right way. But people are probably expecting that they would do something, right? And so what is happening now? Is it all just like, because now what you see online is, it's interesting because now there's this whole, like, probably MAGA rift that's happening even further. You could argue it's already been happening in various ways. There's kind of been a MAGA civil war since roughly after the election, maybe about a month after the election or something. That kind of started more with the H-1B visa thing. I'm not going to get into all these different rabbit trails and details, but anyway, the MAGA rift happening of people just kind of maybe being like, is this really what we signed up for? Is this really what we voted for? Is this really where it's at? Because if you vote for a guy to do a job. And this is the thing, is that people can't say that he's not, that Trump and the administration isn't doing anything, but it's one of those things that for some people, certain issues matter more than others. So I feel like right now, the pivot is probably be like, everybody focus more on trade and tariffs and, the kind of more diplomatic, economical factors, and don't focus on some of the other promises as much, like the whole Epstein thing. Like, they do a release about it, or people talk about it, but it's like, when Glenn Beck was on Patrick Bet-David's podcast and did correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Glenn say that day one of Cash being put in there that he would release the stuff? Did he say something like that? Vincent O'Shannah would be the guy to kind of ask, who's probably keeping tabs on, like, how many days. I don't know if he's still doing the day marker, but he used to kind of say, like, the amount of days since, and we still haven't gotten the client list or whatever he was saying. But anyway, Vinny's kind of on that same track of mine where it's like, guys, like, like, what are we doing kind of thing, or what's the holdup, stuff like that kind of vibe. And so, are we, like, right now, like, if you're on Twitter right now, it's like, at least I'm seeing in my feed, like, something talking about, like, this one post that sticks out in my mind is 2025 is 1984. This is like the ultimate test to see if you'll, not believe your lying eyes and ears or something like that. Like, that's one of the things that kind of sticks out, because it's like, I don't want to, like, believe, I hopefully don't want to completely believe, like, malicious intent here, but it's kind of like, it's hard to do this kind of a stunt and not look bad when everything up until this point was probably looking kind of good or reasonable about, like, the desire to want to bring justice or do something right pertaining to this kind of situation. Like, things like that. Like, the vibe was different. Probably, I think the timeline roughly is like March. There was probably the quote from Bondi about, like, truckloads of files or something. I could be getting the dates wrong or the details of what happened during which month. But there was this little timeline, like March, then April, then July, and, like, how it just kind of got worse over time, like where we're at now with not having anything, or it's actually kind of worse than nothing, because if you say everything now that you were saying is now the opposite, right? So if you now say, rather than just not knowing whether he was killed or not, rather than not releasing a statement on whether Epstein was killed or not, you just straight up say the opposite. Like, no, he did kill himself. You know, and so that's kind of worse than leaving the mystery unsolved or whatever, you know. It's kind of worse than just letting people believe that he didn't kill himself and not saying anything definitive of their stance on the situation. And then when it comes to you know, like your client list and things like that, it's like, yeah, you could get into like this argument over the exact words that people have said over time. Like, oh, maybe certain people didn't say specifically client list, but that he was doing, you know, bad things to children. It's like, okay, well, like, was Epstein and Ghislaine the only people involved in doing the bad things, or was there ever anybody else involved? If there was ever anybody else involved, is it fair to assume that there's some sort of evidence of other people being involved? You know, did Epstein keep some sort of list or record of the people involved? Then is it reasonable to assume that that would be referred to as a client list and that you'd want that evidence if you're going to go after all the people committing crimes? Is that a reasonable assumption, right? So, because like it can become this kind of, is the word semantics, where you get into all these different kinds of discussions over specific wordings and things. And it's like, if it gets to the point of severe verbal gymnastics, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, where are we at? You know what I mean? And even like, I'm recording this video right now, and it's like, it's important to stay genuine, because as soon as the camera goes on, you could end up just kind of playing a character of yourself. So it's good to try to like actually like speak from the heart and try to be genuine about all of it. But it could be kind of a challenge sometimes when you know that you're doing something for a video. So you got to try to like stay in the right frame of mind, I guess. But the other thing is, it's like, so if they claim that he did commit suicide, if they claim that there was no client list, then you also have to go through like the mental gymnastics of, if you want to believe this random reversal or opposite speak of what's happening, then you now also not only have to take what they're saying as definitive, but then ignore any times that anyone has ever said that it's been other than that. I'll simplify what I just said. If you're going to believe the current thing, then you have to ignore all the past things that say something else. Right? Something to the contrary, right? So if you're gonna believe this current thing, if it is indeed not fake news and accurate, right? Like, because I'm not super plugged into all the details and everything, like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so, but roll with me here, okay? So if you're gonna accept this current thing that they're saying, if that is indeed what they're saying, then you have to ignore any other times or any other clips online where Pam or Cash or anybody else has said anything, whether it's like, you know, however many thousands of hours of bad stuff, you know, evidence of bad stuff happening, crimes happening, or, you know, truckloads of evidence, or, you know, the files on the desk, or, you know, when we get in, we're going to do this kind of thing, you know, like we're going to, you know, do this, you know, justice kind of mission, whatever. Like, you now have to, like, I guess, ignore all of that somehow. And it's like, and then if you actually dig deeper, beyond just like the statements and the clips themselves, but if you dig into like, you know, what Candace Owens or Ian Carroll have been reporting on or talking about. And it's funny because like as soon as you bring up, it's not really funny, but as soon as you bring up all these different people, then people get contentious saying, well, oh, Candace Owens, or oh, Ian Carroll, you know, like, and it's like, because people got a problem with different personalities, because certain things that they've said, depending on your allegiances or whatever, or your political views, you might like immediately see red as soon as you hear a certain name. But like, try to get past that for a second, just focus on like, what is the truth, right? What is the truth? Who is right, right? What is, I'm just making sure nobody's around because it'd be kind of awkward if people are just watching me yell in my car. Anyway, what is the truth? Even if you don't like Candace Owens or Ian Carroll, are they correct in this one thing that they're saying, right? Just get on that level for a second, okay? Like, because maybe that's part of this whole game where it's like, again, you've probably heard this before, the whole right versus left, right? And it's, you know, it's kind of funny because earlier today I was just thinking about, like, because I was watching I was watching Sam Hyde on the Hodge Twins podcast the other day, and like when the Hodge Twins ever bring up something about, yeah, you know, these people that are so progressive, so far left, you know, and these Republicans are great tippers. It kind of reminds me of like back in like the COVID times where it was like, you know, when it was kind of like just, it's funny how even that now maybe to a certain degree might seem like simpler times, at least politically, because you kind of thought like, okay, well, if you're on the right, you're you know, you're on the side of truth and, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, yeah, there's some rhinos and stuff and everything else, but it's like, you know, at least we're not like, you know, thinking the kind of, ideology that the left is. It was kind of like a typical red versus blue game of sports or whatever. Like, it was kind of like, it almost feels like, what's the word? Like, it feels almost cozy to think about, like, the COVID times in terms of the political landscape, because I guess it felt so simple and traditional and easy, and my team versus your team, and we're playing a game of dodgeball or basketball, and it's like, oh yeah, my team's right about this, your team's wrong about that. Like, it might sound super childish, and maybe it is to a degree, but it's like, it's almost like hearing them talk reminds me of that time, and it's like it felt so much simpler. And then now in the current time that we're in, it's like just when you think that you're on the right team or whatever, and then things start to get more nuanced, and it's like, are all of our team members, quote unquote, even on the right side or doing what's right? Or what even is our side? Like, what is our side about? Because this whole big tent to try to get Trump elected, but then it's like now you got this whole LGBT insurgency into the MAGA movement, which was probably largely more Christian in its beginning, or at least probably more so of a Christian base, right? And so now you got all this like quarreling and divide and everything else, and now with the kind of the exposing of like the Zionist ideology and like the kind of maybe some of the supremacist mindsets out there or whatever, and all the race baiting that happened during COVID and all this other stuff, and then race is being talked about even more in a different way now, where now like the whole white guilt is dead or white guilt's over kind of thing. And so then now you got people that are more tired of being put down, and now they're speaking more boldly about certain things. Like, it's becoming this nuanced, kind of a unfortunate bummer of a time, to a degree in certain ways, because like just when you thought that it was kind of maybe a bit simple, now it's even more nuanced and less simple. And it's like, where do you go from here? What is the truth? Where do we go from here? And maybe this is, with everything going on and using the Epstein files and all that stuff as an example here, when is the camel's back going to break? Right? So just think about that. Like, how much is the average person who's at least reasonably informed going to take here? And what does that even look like when the camel's back does break? What does it look like when the average citizen who is at least reasonably informed and not completely brainwashed is like, you know what? I have lost all hope or faith in our representatives or political systems or whatever you want to call it to do anything about the things that are the issue, because like how many people, like, if you want to talk about Thomas Massey, when he was talking with Tucker Carlson about, people that have APAC handlers or getting the APAC money or whatever, like, you want to talk about whether it's like, the certain influence of certain nations in America or in other nations, like read the room on what's been being talked about and going on. You don't have to go on Twitter very long before you probably see some examples of these different things. Now, maybe not everything's correct or true, but what does it say when somebody is willing to believe more so random stuff on Twitter that might seem mildly, researched or whatever, compared to what half the things they might say on the news is? And this is not a new phenomenon here, because people have been probably growing in their distrust of the mainstream media since at least like COVID times, right? Maybe prior to that, if you were seeing some of the stuff that might have been taken out of context during Trump's first term, etc., etc. But anyway, roll with me here. And so what do you do when that reaches whatever the top breaking point is? Like, when people completely, like, because for a lot of people, Trump was supposed to be the guy, in the sense that, like, their warrior for change, right? Now, do not deify, do not idolize Trump or anybody else. Don't make anybody an idol. Don't do that, right? And if people are doing that with Trump, that's bad. If people are doing that with anybody, whether it's left, right, center, whatever, it's bad. Don't idolize people. Don't do it. Anyway, repent. We all need to repent. We all should repent. Anyway, so when it comes to this whole thing where, like, if you're choosing a champion in whatever kind of olden day terms, like if you're choosing a warrior to fight for you in a battle, right? So say like you choose your warrior to represent your group of people, and they're going to go into the octagon and fight the other guy, and whichever champion wins, like that whole team wins or whatever. For many people, Trump was probably that warrior that people were rooting for to do the thing, right? To do the thing and to win the battle and to get justice and stuff like that. And it's not that there hasn't been wins put on the board, but like when it comes to certain issues of critical importance and you're not seeing it like really followed through on in the satisfying way that you expect it to be followed through on or whatever, it's like, what do you do then? Because here's the thing, it's like, yeah, you might be getting some wins on trade, but like, if your GDP as a country goes up or down a little bit, does that compare to feeling like you could actually get justice for all the abused children and expose all of the elite pedos and evil people that are doing terrible, evil stuff, right? Like, let's compare these on the scale here. Yeah, sure, everybody probably wants their 401k or their retirement to be in a good state and stuff to be maybe more so made in America than in China and have more economic security and be able to afford gas and groceries. Obviously, that's something that people want, is to afford gas and groceries and things like that, right? That makes sense. But like, if people are going to say like, well, that whole Epstein thing that we said we were going to like get to the bottom of, or what, however they said it, we're actually not really going to, like, he just killed himself. Anyway, moving on. Like, if, like, it's not that people have said it like that, but if that's the sentiment that's felt from all of this, but then they try to be like, but hey, you know, your gas is cheaper now. It's like, are people going to be satisfied with that? Is that where we're at? You know, are people going to be like, oh, well, at least gas is cheap, even though they just kind of swept the whole, you know, pedophile ring under the rug there? You know, we're not going to find out who abused the children and, you know, put them in jail or whatever the punishment would be decided to be. But, you know, at least our gas is cheap now. You know, it's, is that where we're at? Is like, is that enough? Is that enough? And if it's not enough, which hopefully it's not enough, in the sense that hopefully you're not just going to settle for cheap gas, but you're also going to like, like, if, is justice going to play out equally for everybody, regardless of your level of power or influence in society, right? You know, is justice blind, to use that term, right? If it is, then shouldn't everybody be held to account for the crimes that they've done, right? And so it's like, if we're out here and you want justice for all the children and you want these evil people to be prosecuted, and that doesn't happen, and then they just try to make it seem like, well, yeah, we didn't get that one, but hey, at least, you know, the economy's doing good. Like, are people going to be happy with that? Is that are people going to be all right with that? Hopefully not, because if we start settling on critical issues, like, what happens? You know, like, it's been kind of interesting because how I've been hearing about this Epstein thing, it seems like, at least I heard from this one guy on a podcast a while ago, he said something to the effect of, like, people are not going to let this go, right? And it's interesting because many of the other issues kind of just get memory hold, right? Like COVID. How many people are still really regularly in-depth talking about COVID and everything else? They might get brought up from time to time depending on who you listen to, but a lot of stuff in COVID, like, you know, Fauci as a topic of conversation, all these other things, it's kind of just been, you know, left in the past, you know, even though that some of the stuff might not be such a closed book or a you know, justice being done kind of thing, you know, like, it's just kind of left, you know, and it wasn't necessarily left on the best note kind of thing, right? And like, is there justice? Is there accountability, you know, for the stuff that happened, you know, like stuff like that. And so, but with the Epstein thing, it seems like there is more of an effort to not let it go, which is good, because the moment that people let it go, there's probably many people that would be happy to let it go into the past and be forgotten about. But it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, that people, at least a good amount of people, enough of people, are not willing to just let it go, right? And so, if right now what the vibe seems like about it being not good, you know, in terms of like, if that press release was not fake news or whatever, if that's where they try to leave it, is on that note, then what do people do, right? What do people do? Are you going to settle for that? And if you don't want to settle for that, then what? I think that's more of the, maybe that's kind of where my head's at right now. Is like, what is the logical conclusion? Like, where does all this end? You know, aside from like a miracle work of God to bring this about to some sort of, how do I say this? Aside from a miracle of God that brings justice in the proper way, you know, that everybody could say, this is, you know, justice being done. Aside from a miracle of God being done in that way, and maybe that'll happen, you know what I mean? Maybe like whatever the will of God is, right? But like in terms of where we're at right now, like obviously I don't know what's going to happen. Like I don't know the future, right? But when people feel, like I'm just kind of repeating myself now, and I need to really just trim the fat of what I'm saying. So the essential idea is, if people voted for somebody to do something and they don't really do it, or at least they don't really bring it to a proper, conclusion or whatever, don't do a proper job at it, and they're supposed to be the selected warrior to do the job, then what? Where do we go from there? And are we ever going to actually uproot this deep state stuff? Or is it just like, because I think what the hard truth right now, the tough pill to swallow, is that, like, what if, because if you were like MAGA during COVID, you might have been like, yeah, we're like, we're red pilled, or we're like, awake. We're not woke, we're awake. We're on the right side, or on the side of truth. And then, all the leftists, all the progressives, all the liberals, whatever you want to call it, they're the brainwashed ones, all the leftists, they're the progressives, they're the brainwashed ones. But then you might get to that moment where you're like, are we brainwashed too? Is it possible that we're brainwashed too? Not with everything, but just with like certain things. Like, is it possible that essentially, maybe it's better to say, do we have some blind spots? Like, is there a lot of cope going on right now? Like, I was watching a video on Twitter earlier today where it's like, this guy was talking about cope from a couple different groups and stuff. Anyway, I won't get into the details too much, but it's like, because we might have thought that we were on like the proper side of the argument, or we're supporting the right candidate or whatever, but like, what if they're also compromised? What if they're also involved in some way? Like, because if you go like David Icke would probably, I don't know a whole lot about the completeness of what he believes, but David Icke would probably say that, Trump is just as much a part of it as all the rest of them are. And then, all part of the same group of elites or whatever. I'm not going to get too much into it on that because I don't really know a whole lot about exactly what David Icke thinks. But anyway, quite the character. But anyway, so if things are not what we thought that they were, and people end up feeling betrayed by one of the last people that they thought could really make a difference, in the realm of politics and government and stuff, then what do you do? Because if it ends up looking like even Trump can't do it, like can't change the political system and uproot corruption or whatever, and some people might say, well, Trump's corrupt too, and then a lot of times we're used to hearing that from people on the left wing saying that, and it's like, but maybe the truth is that everybody's corrupt, but like I don't know that for certain, but it's like, because it seems like it's really hard to get somebody in a position of power like that actually will follow through on it, and it's almost kind of like the James O'Keefe quote maybe kind of comes to mind a bit right now, where it's like, if the price isn't your life, then you are for sale. So like, how many people are willing to go to the very end, even death, for what is right? Like, how many people are willing to get like shot like JFK did to try to do what is right? You know what I mean? Like, how many people are willing to go that far? Death, torture, your reputation slandered, whatever, fill in the blank. Like, how many people are willing to go to that length? And so maybe we're really finding out where people lie, where the true allegiances are, because it seems like the whole Zionist thing is where a lot of like the ultra, realizing where everybody is at kind of happened, because it's like, just when you thought like the right wing was like kind of more or so united, then the whole Zionist thing happened. Like the Israel-Palestine thing, and that issue brought out a bunch of different views out of people that you might have thought were all on the same side. So now it's like, okay, Ben Shapiro is now all of a sudden not necessarily the same person that you would have allied with a couple years prior or whatever, because he might seem like more of an Israel first kind of guy rather than America first. And to put it in perspective, I'm Canadian here, right? So maybe I don't even have much of a of whatever to talk about this, like qualify, whatever you want to say. But it's like people can speak on stuff even if they're not a citizen of that country. But like I might not have enough of a horse in the race, whatever the term is, to describe why I might not be qualified to talk on this. But anyway, regardless, where do we go from here? We're kind of realizing where everybody stands and how many people are maybe compromised, because it really just comes down to like how many people would be willing to be like, you know what, no, I will not take any foreign PAC money. We really should just say from any country. Like I will not take PAC money from any country. Doesn't matter whether it's Israel, whether it's the Qatar, like, because that's kind of, it's almost a meme at this point, like saying that somebody's like sponsored by Qatar or whatever. It feels like it's just kind of this thing that's said to try to discredit somebody, but it's like, like didn't they say that Candace was taking money from Qatar, and then Candace is like, she kind of made a joke out of it, because as far as I understand, as far as she said, she's not taking money from Qatar, but she's like, Qatar, please sponsor me. Like, it's almost kind of like a joke now, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so it's like, everybody that like, takes a stance against Israel is like funded by Qatar or whatever, whether they say that or not, I'm not an expert on it. But all that to say, there's a lot of words here. I'm kind of rambling. Hopefully that's okay. Hopefully some of what I'm saying is making sense, but it's essentially like, how many times do I got to say the same thing, where it's like, where do we go from here? Because I think maybe right now is where it's reaching more critical mass for a lot of reasons that I've already explained. But it's like, because this is the thing where it's like, sometimes Trump and, Bibi Netanyahu might seem like they're kind of buddies. Sometimes it might seem like they're not so friendly with each other, whatever. Who is influencing who? Who holds the power over who? Are even all the people on the right wing that we thought were legit, are they also compromised? Whether through, taking money or influence from a certain nation, or is it something else? Like, is there something else going on here? Like, and like, let's get real. Like, okay, so like, if like the Epstein thing is really like the kind of like the house of cards, where if that falls down, then probably everything falls down. This is the thing. So it's like, how many people, I'm going to sidetrack for a second, how many people that are like in the current administration are potentially either, on that list or somehow involved with it, whether they were involved directly or indirectly. Like, I'm just like, this is just like a guess here. This is like, I don't know anything about this, but it's like, because if nobody in the Trump administration or involved with the Trump administration was on the client list, then why not release it? If it doesn't affect anybody on your team, why would you not release it? Unless it's like a bargaining chip to try to hold an edge or hold leverage over another nation or whatever, or leaders of other nations. Like, that's what I think Patrick Bet-David said on one of his podcasts in some sort of way, making it seem like that would be a thing that could be used as leverage. Not necessarily that he supports the stuff being used in that way, because I think Pat said that he just wants the truth to come out about it, which is the proper perspective to have. Like, it's better off to just do what is right. And what is right, correct me if I don't even correct me if I'm wrong. Like, how could this be wrong? It's like, isn't the right thing to do to release the evidence, prosecute the criminals, regardless of whether you lose leverage over other people or not? Because maybe, like, no, not even maybe. Sometimes it's just about doing what is right, not about having some sort of tactical advantage, because eventually one day we're all going to die. And, like, when you answer before God, do you want to have on your, like, however the proper way that you say this is, do you want it to be the case that you could have done what was right, but you didn't because you thought it would give you some extra, playing cards in this game of politics? Like, oh, well, in order to get some blah, blah, blah thing done, I chose to not release the evidence because then I could leverage this other person to do what I wanted for the next 10 years. It's like, or you could have, like, prosecuted all the criminals that abuse children. You know what I mean? Like, so where is the priority here? Sometimes maybe it's like, here's the thing. This is a question that's come to mind. You hear about winning, stuff like that. What does winning mean? What does winning mean? Because you might hear about winning and all this stuff, but what does winning mean? Because here's another thing to think about. Are you willing to honor God even if it means losing? Are you willing to do what is right, even if it means losing? Is another thing that you could say, because maybe some people don't believe in God or whatever, but like maybe you even have some level of morality where like you at least want to do what is right. Although like at the end of the day, the Bible is the truth, right? So are you willing to honor God even if it means losing? Because all this talk about winning, and maybe sometimes you got to take the L to do what's right. Is that possible? Because we're all, maybe obsessed with taking all the W's and stuff. Maybe sometimes you got to take the L. Maybe you got to lose that leverage over somebody else of another nation because you want to do what is right, So do what is right. Trump, do what is right. Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, do what is right. Are you willing to risk death to serve your country in doing what is right? This is basic stuff. It's tough stuff. It's easy to say it. It's hard to do it. But am I wrong? There was something else I was going to say too, but I don't even remember now. There's so much like kind of rambling and emotion involved in this stuff because it's kind of like, it's like a critical point maybe where like we're like teeter-tottering on the make or break of whether what people voted for is actually what they're going to get, or whether it was just another sort of the same kind of thing. Like, have you seen that meme on Twitter where it's not even really a meme? It's just like, no matter who you vote for, the debt keeps rising and the bombs keep dropping, something like that. And it just shows different presidents, everybody from, I think, George Bush Sr. to Trump, right? And it's like, can you really argue with that? Now, at the same time, if you're going to go on the amount of bombs dropped, Trump's probably dropped some at the least out of all the past presidents. I can't confirm that. I don't know if that's accurate. It's just a guess. Regardless, was bombing Iran the right thing? And all this concern over Iran getting nuclear weapons or whatever, and how long has that been talked about? But does Israel have nuclear weapons? Are we okay with that? And to what degree, this whole thing with NATO and the UN and every world organization, and I was talking about this the other day. It seems like whenever there is a world organization of some sort, I get the vibe that it just tends to trend satanic, right? It's a whole rabbit hole to go down, but it's like all of these world organizations, it's like if you see what the vibe is right now and you're kind of reasonably paying attention to what's going on or what it seems like is going on, it's like, doesn't it feel like, NATO, United Nations, the World Economic Forum, probably to some degree the World Trade Organization, but I don't really know enough about it. But all this stuff, all the world globalist stuff, it's like, doesn't it kind of all just feel like it's just trending, more like evil, you know what I mean? And so is the future in the world that every country just becomes isolationist again? Everybody tapers down, their immigration stuff to not have mass migration. People just they focus on people that are coming into the country just assimilating, becoming a member of that nation in as many ways as possible. Actually representing the values of the nation, not just making everything the same everywhere. Not having massive floods of people that cause just look at the world right now. Look at the world. Is all this mass migration, what has it done a lot of good? Look around. And this is the stuff people will peg you for being racist or whatever, xenophobic, all these words. And people as time goes on, it seems like people probably care less and less about the words. The words probably tend to have less effect when crime in your area is getting worse. And if you've had family members abused by certain bad people that may have made it in the recent time, maybe partly because or maybe due to these bad immigration policies, right? If you have been negatively affected by the stuff going on, then when you complain about the stuff, and reasonably so, rightfully so, when you complain to your local officials about the stuff and then people call you mean names, we might be at the point where the mean names just don't quite sting anymore when you've been hit with them thousands of times and all you are is maybe a normal guy that wants to live your life, or normal gal that wants to live your life, normal family person, people that have a family, and they just want to have their family live in peace, chill out, live a good life. There was this Asmongold video a while ago. He was reacting to something else. He was reacting to some video. I don't remember what it was called, I don't think, but he's probably brought this up maybe a couple times, who knows? But anyway, this idea that like Asmongold was talking about how like you watch, these old shows from the 80s or whatever it was. And I think even the Goldbergs is an example of this, which I think takes place in the 80s, but I think it came out in 2000s and 2010s or something. Anyway, or that's when the show was running. Anyway, when you have this example in a TV show of like a regular dude that's working like a job, like a regular job, and he can afford, and he has like a house, a couple kids, a good house, like a nice house. And like on the Goldbergs, I don't think that the mom actually has a job. I think she's a stay-at-home mom. And they have a car. I'm not sure if they have 2 cars. I don't know. But it's like, and they live in this nice suburb, this nice area. Like how Asmongold describes it is like when you have this guy that works a normal job and he has a nice house, a couple kids, 2 cars, and a boat. I don't know if all that's true in all of these, TV examples. But if that's true, then that might really strike home with somebody where it's like, the living seemed like such a good quality of life for just having an average job. And then now with where we're at now, you have to be having like this probably pretty significantly high salary to be able to afford the same things. And are both parents just expected to work in order to afford these same things? It's not that you need all of these same things. Like you don't need a boat necessarily. You don't need 2 cars necessarily. Maybe you don't need a big house necessarily. Like in terms of the needs, you don't necessarily need a lot, right? And we should not be focused on the materialism. We should not be materialistic in that sense. It could probably be a challenge to not be like that. But you know what I mean? Like life is so about so much more important things than stuff. You know what I mean? But just as an example of how the economic downturn seems like it may have taken effect, it's like do you even have to look at statistics, or can you just like check the vibe of what it feels like? Does it feel like things are better? And so when you have this state of affairs where you see that different metrics of quality of living probably seem like or feel like they're getting worse, and then like what's being done to correct it? Is there any like tangible way that people could see of getting back to a better time or moving forward into a better time, right? Then what do people do, right? Where are we at? Where do we go from here? So we'll get real quick back to talking about like the future of countries, right? Because it's fair to say that we've been kind of going more of this globalist trend where, they have the United Nations, all these different organizations. And to a degree, you could argue that people are kind of taught that we need them, right? But do we need them? And then the fear is probably like, well, if NATO disbands, then who will stop Russia? And it's like, do people really believe that Russia wants to take over the world? Like, is that really what they want? And I could be completely off base. Like, is that what they want? Or is it like, do countries just kind of want to like look out for their own nations and do their own thing? Maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much of a libertarian ideal sort of mindset for countries, because it's fair to say like places like China, I think that they're probably more bent on world domination or whatever. But it's like, on the bright side, it seems like the things are shifting in the direction of where people feel more free to just talk about these things openly, which is good. Because like if people don't want you to talk about something, then what's that say? Because then you get to the point where like even if somebody just deems something offensive and they said we can't talk about that, then they might start to think like, oh well, is there some truth to it? Is that why you don't want me to talk about it? Is it inconvenient for you or whatever? And so like you can unpack that in all different kinds of directions. But anyway, it's like if no conversation basically is off limits, then does that mean that things can go a bit better, but anyway, so like just talk. Like, can people just talk now? Can we just talk to each other like human beings and have a little debate about things and come to some sort of conclusion? This is the other thing, like this idea around like when you're trying to find out what the truth is, and it seems like no matter what, everybody's got like some counter argument and some sort of oh well, that study's not true, and oh, how do you know that they're telling the truth? And even though that's a verified source, how do you know that truth isn't, or that verified source isn't being funded by some other organization? So then what they're saying is the truth is only kind of the truth, or it's a misdirected truth. It just seems like the more you get into the weeds sides on these different topics, because it's like if you listen to CNN, or if you listen to somebody on YouTube, they might be saying something completely different about the same thing, and then you could make probably pretty reasonable arguments as to why CNN is misdirecting or is incorrect or lying or whatever. But then at the same time, for other issues on YouTube, is it possible that somebody's wrong even though it might sound like they're right, and then maybe they're playing to their bias, so they're getting sponsored by somebody or whatever, and then like somebody else on YouTube might be right about the issue and they're on the left side this time instead of on the right side of politics. And like it's like the more you go on and on about these things, it almost kind of feels like there's kind of always somebody with a counter argument, and they might make it sound like it's a reasonable argument, which may make you think like, oh, are they right? And it's almost like it gets to the point where it's almost like no matter where you go about it with the arguing and the discussing, everybody kind of claims that they have the proper interpretation of the truth of what's going on, the proper insight, the truth about the matter at hand. And it's almost like you get to this one point where it's like you almost don't necessarily know definitively who is telling the truth, and you just kind of like gotta like go with what looks best, like with what looks right, like proper, you know what I mean? Like, because it's like, if it never ends, then what do you do? Like, if this endless debate about who's right about something, whether it's tariffs, whether it's trade, whether it's is Israel influencing the U.S. or not? Who is in control of the world? Who is in, powerful positions? Who is doing this? Who's doing that? Does Russia want to take over the world? Does Iran have nukes? Do they actually want to nuke places? Does Israel have nukes? Do they not have nukes? What's these different people's motivations? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's a lot of what it ends up can feel like. It can maybe be a bit overwhelming, because it's like it never ends. Like, how many of these Hollywood people are pedos? And this is the whole thing about the Epstein thing, is that it's not that nobody's talked about this, but I feel like this is the thing that people aren't really talking about as much, is that everybody's talking about it from the right perspective, in the sense that everybody's talking about how, like, oh, we're going to expose the evil people, and we're going to bring justice, and that's a good thing. Right? We're going to expose the evil people, and we're going to get justice for the children, we're going to get justice, however people say it. Right? And that's good stuff. That's real good. I just feel like the part that people aren't acknowledging, and this part doesn't matter. It's just a factor, but it actually doesn't matter, because you still should do what is right regardless of what happens. But a factor that people aren't necessarily considering, Ian Carroll, I think, mentioned this, where it's like it will tear at the very fabric of America if the Epstein list is released, or something like that. I'm not sure if Ian Carroll said it, somebody else might have said it on Twitter. Regardless, it's like, if the whole truth comes out about Epstein and all that stuff, then how many movies are going to be forever ruined for you? Because now every time you watch it, you're like, that dude's a pedophile, right? And it's like, and you might be scared of which names are on that list, right? Like, I'm not going to give it examples right now, but if you looked online at who different people are saying are pedos, you could probably get an idea for like the different actors out there that might be involved in all these bad things. And so that's one part that people are maybe not ready for, is you might like ruin whole parts of your childhood experience in terms of like the film and TV shows that you liked watching growing up. A lot of that might just be ruined forever now. But isn't that necessary if it means doing what is right, getting justice for the children, and also potentially protecting future children? Because if you catch a lot of the bad guys and they can no longer do bad things, then aren't you also saving future victims from becoming victimized? Right? So the point is that regardless of whether it ruins things, these entertainment things, it's got to be worth it, right? It's got to be worth it. Because you got to do what's right, right? Because it's like, and losing out on, ruining an old movie or TV show pales in comparison to dying for something, right? Pales in comparison to taking a bullet for the cause, right? Of doing what's right. So it's like, you gotta do what's right. You know what I mean? You ought to do what is right. I'm just saying that that's a factor that people maybe are not quite fully prepared for, is just maybe how many things will become like shockingly ruined if the whole truth does come out. It still should come out, right? But I'm just saying that's a factor to keep in mind, but it doesn't change what should be done, right? Anyway, so, God willing, may full and proper justice be done, and may the whole truth be revealed about as much as we need to know about things, right? And hopefully people will know the truth before the end about all these different issues. That'd be nice. I don't know what's going to happen, but it seems like a lot is happening though, and it almost seems like it might get to the point where the elites have no choice but to like disappear or to come clean about what's happening, like to tell the truth, because it's like if everybody kind of wakes up and doesn't let it go forever and begins to start to make that very clear in whatever way is proper to do so, then like they might not have any choice, because if everybody knows what's up, everybody knows what's up. And real quick, what I want to address is this whole, it's weird because it's brought up by people that are kind of not really, that don't really care about finding out what the truth is, and it's usually brought up as kind of almost like a argument ender to trying to further figure out anything that's going on. But have you ever tried to tell people the truth about what's going on, or what you believe is the truth about what's really happening out there? And they kind of say like, well, there's no point because we can't do anything about it anyway. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard people say something like that when you try to like share something or wake somebody up to something, whatever it is, right? Like say it's like, you know, you could use Big Pharma as an example. You could use the Epstein stuff as an example. You know, this, globalist regime. You know, like pick a different, like pick any issue, any kind of these things that might be considered conspiracy theories or rabbit holes, even if there's evidence, you know what I mean? And like, especially if there's evidence, because then they're more likely to maybe actually entertain the conversation for a minute. But as soon as it gets like kind of scary real for somebody, like do they say like, oh, well, I don't know, man, I don't know much about that. That's pretty freaky. I don't really want to talk about that. And they might like shy away from it. But if they ever give you that kind of answer where it's like, well, there's no point in making a fuss about it because we can't do anything about it anyway. Like, I think I've come to realize, because just recently when I was talking about somebody, the kind of counter to that argument kind of came to mind or whatever. If everybody knew what was going on, are you saying that still nothing could be done about it? Is that what you're saying? Like, or is that what they're saying? What people are saying? Because it's weird. It's almost like it's a weird argument. It's a weird argument for people to say, well, it doesn't matter because we can't do anything about it anyway. It's like, how has any change in the past happened ever? Like, it's almost like people make it sound like everything is just a flow of stuff and it doesn't matter. Like the citizenry never doesn't really have much of an effect on it, even though like in history there's probably many times where the general citizenry or specific groups of people have had an effect on things and changed the course of history or whatever. Like the American Revolution, like wasn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a historian, wasn't that just kind of like some people getting together around a specific goal, like desire of a different way of life, and then like making steps to make that happen? It wasn't something from like, as far as I understand, it wasn't something from like the top down. Like it wasn't like the government all of a sudden decided to like, you know, give them what they wanted. It's like, no, they like, didn't people just leave, you know, and then the Mayflower thing or whatever. And I don't know how much of the history is true around that, because the more time goes on, the more you realize that like how much of history is a lie. You know, when we hear that quote, history is written by the victors, if we ever heard that quote in school, did any of us really ever really think about what that meant? Like to the full extent? Like, what does that really mean? You know, like history is written by the victors. Okay, moving on. Like, isn't that kind of how we reacted to it in school? But like, if history is written by the victors, what does that mean? What does that mean? You know, like, history is written by the victors, so, like, maybe it's like the Norm Macdonald comedy bit. I might be misquoting it, but didn't he say something like, yeah, the good guys in history always won. At least that's what the history book told me. You know, or something like that. Like, dude, I don't know a lot about Norm Macdonald. I haven't watched a lot of his stuff, but it seems like he might have, like, really understood things. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So, yeah. So if the truth does come out, so first of all, I'm just going to finish that thought where it's like, hey, there might be indeed a good point to waking everybody up to as much of the truth as possible, because if everybody knew the truth, it would be kind of hard for all the people pushing lies to push lies. Because if everybody knew the truth, undeniably, then couldn't everybody just say, no, we're not going to go along with this lie? We're not going to support that bad thing? Like, And isn't that how change happens? So we kind of need to stop this entertaining this non-argument here about how, like, well, we can't do anything about it anyway. Like, is that what is that what bad people want us to think? Is that we can't do anything about it, so why bother? And so then at that point, isn't it just like sitting there emotionless as you watch your own death coming towards you when it doesn't have to, maybe it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, like it's almost like we need to, like, don't entertain this defeatist or defeated mindset. And it's a pretty doom and gloom kind of time, and it seems like there's a lot of doomer content, like doomer in the sense of doom and gloom content on YouTube. It seems like it's like a kind of a pessimistic time. Depending on who you talk to in Gen Z, it's not really looking too bright, at least out there in the YouTube ecosystem, at least from what I've been seeing from my algorithm. And that's the other thing. You don't even necessarily know if, like, you're really in the know with what the average thing is, like the average narrative or whatever that's being pushed in general is, because your algorithm isn't tuned more to, like, what you like and what your interests are. So your algorithm might be different from somebody else's. Isn't that how it works? And then as a result, like, does anybody really know what the common thing is in the internet ecosystem? Or is it all just like a bunch of little, well, you could argue it is, yeah, just a bunch of little echo chambers. But I guess you'd have to, like, search, like, the most searched words for the month or whatever to kind of find out what the overall larger trends are, as opposed to the smaller trends in people's algorithms and stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of words that I've been saying. It's a lot of tangents or whatever. A lot comes to mind throughout the day, but then, like, you forget some stuff. Some stuff maybe sticks in your head, but then you maybe forget other things. And then by the time, like, I may think about recording a video and then not get around to it later in the day, at least. That's how I've been the last, like, week or two, at least. And so today I actually got around to recording something. I'm kind of summing up a lot of the things that I can remember that are coming to mind that maybe are not new things, but things that have come to mind anyway. So maybe that's just where I end it, because I'm really bad at ending videos, like when it comes to stuff like this. Yeah, so put the seatbelt on, get back home. The sun's went down over the trees over the hill over there. You know, this is actually a pretty good spot to film this right now, and maybe part of myself, or maybe part of me knew this in my mind, why positioning my car in this exact spot was good, because it put things in perspective. Because right here, I'm at the edge of the lake, right? And there's this, I think that's a bench right there, and beside it is a little, it's not really that little. There's a bench, beside it is a cross, because something happened at this lake a while ago where I don't know if a kid drowned here or something like that, but there's a little cross over there. And maybe, because I believe that that's like a kind of a memorial or something like that. I don't know. I don't think it's a burial place. I think it's just a memorial to the kid that died or whatever happened here. But that stuff maybe kind of puts things in perspective, right? Like, death is a reality, right? And so, like, in light of that, like, you know, our time is pretty short on this earth in light of eternity. And so what are we doing? What are we doing with our lives? What are we doing with our time? God is sovereign, and it's like, we ought to do what is right. Correct? So, and I made sure to put this on before coming here, right? Hopefully this helps to keep things in perspective. Right? So, hopefully I've said something good in this kind of rant / rambling / speaking what's on my mind, whatever. Please try to take it critically, or to critically think about what I've said, and please don't just get offended and misunderstand me and click off and, you know, be angry at me or whatever. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. Hopefully that's not what you're going to do. Try to, like, genuinely think about the things that I'm saying. And if you disagree with it, okay. But at least try to hopefully see what I'm saying here. Right? But yeah, if things keep trending this way, where is Western society going? But on the bright side, as far as I've heard, it seems that there is a at least maybe Gen Z men trend towards, as far as I've heard, wanting to have families, like wanting to have kids. And I think, what was it? Was it the Catholic Diocese in Texas reported a 71% increase in conversions? Was that among Gen Z? I'm not 100% sure on these details. Feel free to look it up and correct me if I'm wrong. And at the same time, I don't believe I agree with the entire Catholic theology, right? I'm much more like Protestant in my belief system, and a lot of times the whole Catholic versus Orthodox versus Protestant debate, a lot of times it seems like the arguments against Protestantism are usually using the worst examples of Protestantism, which is not necessarily a fair argument. But anyway, like, regardless, repent and believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. That is what I will say. Thank you for watching, and hopefully things trend in a better direction. So, thank you for watching. We will see you around. And I guess I'll film myself driving out of here. Okay. Okay. I think the worst is over. All right. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in to whatever this was. I think I feel a little bit better now. Feel maybe a little bit lighter in part of myself, or whatever, however you say that. You know, when people feel a little bit lighter after they get something off their chest, maybe that's what I'm feeling. Maybe it's just feeling lightheaded from talking so much. Who knows? Regardless, come on, camera, brighten up. Exposed for my face. And it's not doing it anyway. Hopefully, there we go. Hopefully things get better. At the end of the day, God is sovereign, and the Lord's will be done. Right? So, what's really most important is the state of your own soul. Right? Because at the end of the day, all this stuff in this life is just this life, right? Like, you know, the turmoil and the politics and the blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's nice. It's a nice sight over there. Some beauty around us, right? So the world has a lot of bad in it. It isn't all bad all the time, but there is a lot of bad at the end of the day. It is a fallen world, so even the good stuff is tainted with the fall, you know? But, you know, by the grace of God, we carry on. And, you know, at the end of the day, as a friend of mine said, or a family friend, we're like pilgrims in this life, something like that, as a Christian, right? And so think of it like we're just passing through, right? Just passing through. But you never know what God's plan is. Maybe this whole doom and gloom modern day stuff course corrects by the grace of God, and maybe things pan out better in the end. You never know. And so it could be tough to keep a positive perspective during this time. But at the end of the day, if you have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, right? If you believe in God, the Christian God, right? Like the God, the only God, the real God, then hopefully that will help you to have a better perspective walking through these trials and tribulations and bad times, because this is not all there is. And I think right now I'm reminding myself of that. You know, this is not all there is. So it could be really stressful, it could be really crazy, but it's not all there is, you know? And so the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent. Thanks for watching.